the meeting of the Ojai Valley Groundwater Management Agency on April 30th at 3 o'clock. I have some sad news for all of the members. Peter Theckley was one of our board members and represented the mutual water companies and the OBGMA. He left the board last year due to an illness, and he passed away on Friday. He was a colleague and a personal friend of mine. So I'd like to ask to adjourn this meeting in his memory. You want to call the roll?
Oh, Director Daddy?
Here.
Director Finch?
Here.
Director Weaver?
Here.
Chair Hages?
Here. Okay, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, director comments. Mike, you have anything?
No, nothing from Regional.
Jim?
Nothing. We met, but nothing other than appointing a member. Nothing happened.
Bob?
Nothing for this meeting from the district.
I don't have anything either. Julia?
A really short general manager report. We got the state controller's report filed prior to the deadline of April 30th. That's really about it.
Okay. Jordan?
Share the screen here.
Are you someplace fun, Julia?
Kitchen.
I'm at my daughter's house in Calabasas.
Oh, well,
So yes, it's fun.
a little fun, yeah.
Oh, it's fun.
Right. Indeed, echoing those remarks to start off, Peter Thielke was a good guy, for sure, and we'll miss him. Today's presentation is about the Ojai Basin conditions as of April 2026, entitled April Showers Bring a Flattened Curve. And not Mayflowers yet, we'll see what happens. Despite how wet it's been, we've had obviously some very dry times, and the way that the precipitation has fallen, as we're discussing on entry, was being so hot and dry in March with a little bit in April, really brought us up to our totals at 52.99 inches of precipitation on the ridge above the San Antonio Creek tributary area, on the valley floor at 27.86 inches year to date. And when I was getting this data this morning, I zoomed out pretty far on the maps, and I think the only places with over 50 inches of precipitation are the ridge just right here above Ojai, and another spot at one of the wettest spots in Santa Barbara County that had about 50 inches of precipitation at San Marcos Pass. So we're leading the local regional league in rainfall, at least in our tributary area. What's that done to the groundwater basins? Okay, you've seen this before. We're looking at the curve of the hydrograph for Elrod well since October 2023. This is our key well. And as I click along here, we see what the water years 23-24 did, 24-25, and now 25-26. 48.6 feet of rise in 23-24 following the wet 22-23 year. Only 7.5 feet of rise in 24-25 in the groundwater basin, and 93.9 feet this year. What you'll notice in these curves that we see is how flat-topped the 2023-24 hydrograph is at this scale. And these are water levels that are collected every 3 hours in this particular well. So it gives us a good understanding of exactly when the peaks and valleys are, exactly when pumping is occurring, and how how we compare years when we have what we call a supercharged or rejected recharge portion of the basin with the flat top that you see in 2023-24, the more rounded top of a hydrograph as opposed to the peak and then recession of 2024 to 25 and now this year. Although the absolute water levels were much shallower this past year, what we see is this curve of recession. In 2023-24, things went pretty dry, pretty quick with respect to precipitation. And we had the same angle effectively in 2024 to 2025. Now this year, so far, it's subtle, but that curve is flattened owing to the pattern of precipitation we've seen, namely the 1/2 inch to inch we've seen in April, giving us just enough to keep things cooler. As Jim said on entry, March felt more like summer than it does now. And that's true hydrographically, and it shows in this data. On the longer term, we're still well above our average. We tend to see artesian conditions, at least in portions of the basin, when the key well has a depth to water of 100 feet or shallower. So when this hydrograph is up, as it is now, with a depth to water of 59.46 feet in the key well, as of yesterday, about 95% basin capacity and 76,000 acre feet. We still have artesian conditions in at least portions of the basin. On the surface water side, as of yesterday's measurements, going around the tributary areas, the inflow is declining. 0.56 CFS at Gridley, Thatcher's effectively dry, Reeves 0.39 CFS. The surface flow out of Montgomery, or the Fox Barranca, under Creek Road, 0.74 CFS. Surface outflow on the main stem of the San Antonio Creek at basin exit, 11.62 CFS. Senior Canyon at Ladera Bridge, 1.58 CFS. Stewart Canyon effectively dry at ground surface. And again, this is information from what's available subaerially. There still is some subsurface inflow in each of these channels because none of these have a bedrock bottom to them. They're all over an alluvial substrate. Total inflow of those sums, at least 2.53 CFS, and the outflow of 12.36 CFS. That's a pretty significant contribution from the perch system, or artesian wells that are coming through, or irrigation return flow through that. I want to talk a bit about that, but let's go what happens when that starts to dry and we start to have less flow. That blue line is about the extent of surface flow in San Antonio Creek before it completely infiltrates into the basin. And then on the discharge side, just upstream from Ojai Avenue, we have daylighting water from the perch system, increasing in flow as San Antonio Creek flows to the southwest. All right, before we talk about that volume and that differential, I wanted to reset something which we get asked quite a bit as the OBGMA and consultants to the OBGMA. What's the basin? When we say the basin, what do we mean? A map that we pull down from County View, Ventura County website, their GIS planning system, is pretty helpful in this regard. So the base map here shows some shaded hillside topography, the streets, etc. Los Padres National Forest area in the green, darker green or olive, the city limits in yellow, and the unincorporated parts of the area in gray. Now, if we superimpose the OBGMA jurisdiction based on the enabling legislature, it looks like this. And oftentimes people refer to the basin as, well, the basin. It's this shape that is a file based on early 1990s understanding of what the basin contributions were, where wells were, and this is codified in the state legislature under the Enabling Act, the OBGMA Act. Now, a few years later, we realized, hey, you know what? There's some bedrock in that area and some alluvium. What does that look like? And then 2016, this is what we came up with. The definition of the Ojai Valley groundwater basin per DWR, which also informs SGMA and the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. So when we say the alluvial portion of the Ojai Basin, it's this purple with the light blue outline that we see. And that is what is the Groundwater Sustainability Agency and governed by the Groundwater Sustainability Plan. The GMA jurisdiction is larger than that, and that's an important consideration because as the OBGMA, there is jurisdiction to the extent of the light blue, more polygonal shape, but the actual natural alluvial surface that is the Ojai Valley Groundwater Basin is what the GSP applies to and the GSA governs. Now, within that is that southwest uppermost saturated zone. And what I like about this is that it's continually evolving, and it's only that southwest portion of the Ojai Basin that is identified thus far as the southwest uppermost saturated zone or perch system, outlined in that purplish bluish material. As we measure that today, based on wells that have been drilled in the past year or so, we've identified that as encompassing about 2,735 acres. And what's interesting is that Stewart Canyon, Fox Barranca, and the East Ojai Drain all are tributary to that area, and all the water that flows on the south side of the mountains upstream from that area is tributary to only the perch system. The rest of the basin receives recharge to the main production aquifers from the other tributary areas to the north and east. Now, if we assume that that's 10 foot of saturated thickness, it's sometimes more, it's sometimes less. That volume of that aquifer encompasses about 27,350 acre feet of volume of rocks and water in space. But if 30% of the porosity is assumed, the volume of water in that perched aquifer is 8,205 acre feet, or close to 10% of the basin capacity is stored in the perch system. So when you ask, where does all that water come from? That's it. Easily 10 CFS can be discharged. Delta from what's coming in from those northern tributary areas. What does that look like in photographs this month? At least as of yesterday, there's that 0.45 CFS inflow at Reeves Creek. You notice how much algae is present in the creek here. And algae is an important component of the hydrography, I think. It's important from a standpoint of water quality indications, but it's also important with respect to infiltration capacity. When an algal mat is sitting on the bottom of a creek, you're not going to get a lot of infiltration into it. But it also slows that flow to some degree, so you have some benefit of water moving more slowly through the system, allowing for some infiltration, but the algae actually stops some of that infiltration from going straight down, reducing the infiltration capacity of the creek bottom. Stewart Canyon was dry, at least at ground surface, probably some underflow that's occurring there. Thatcher Creek also dry at ground surface, but probably some underflow occurring. At Ladera Road Bridge, that's what 1.58 CFS looks like. You notice how clear it is, sort of upstream a lot of the nutrients that are probably finding their way into the creek system, but also a shadow of the bridge. So a little less algae present there. Over at the Hermitage Road, Ladera Road crossings, this is what it looks like there as of yesterday. The Hartman Well at Boardman Road still flowing artesian. Upstream looking from Grand Avenue on San Antonio Creek, you see that it's dry, with complete infiltration of the San Antonio Creek flow just to the north thereof. And last month, from Ojai Avenue, looking north toward the mountains, we had this much flow coming in, but just starting to daylight in that area. Again, this is over the perch system. At the Fox Barranca or Montgomery Street, underneath Creek Road, we have this much flow, about 3/4 of a CFS. And at the main portion of the basin outflow, we get that 11.62 CFS as we measured yesterday. Now, by the time you get down underneath Old Creek Road, closer to the confluence with Ventura River, this is what it looks like. At this point, I think you notice the algae present as well. an algal mat over to the left or the east side as you're looking south here. And the county gauges today, we're showing this as being about 70 to 80 CFS. Incorrect to my way of thinking. It's a lot less than that. It's probably in the 20s. And the Camp Comfort gauge was showing about 200 CFS instantaneously. So always making a note of that when the actual flow is in the 20s. All right, what do we got going forward? La Nina to El Nino surface oscillation neutral is complete, and NOAA is expecting ENSO neutral to El Nino, expecting next month, June, and in July. What that means is for the seasonal precipitation outlook for May, June, July, warm and about average with respect to precipitation. Now, the forecast that we see, clicked on the November, December, January 26, 27, warmer and drier in the Pacific Northwest and average to wetter where we are. So we'll see what Mother Nature gives us for this coming 26-27 water year, but we're standing on the shoulders of 4 very wet water years preceding. There you go. Any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah. You talked about the perched aquifer, and I want to make sure I have the right understanding of this. I think we had an ordinance came up within the last year or so prohibiting extraction from the perched aquifer.
Correct.
And my understanding would be nothing is being extracted from the perched aquifer then.
That's my understanding as well. And it's OBGMA Ordinance 12, which was enacted in, I think it was September 2023. That prohibited the screening of wells or the unsealing of any wells, any new wells in that system. And I don't know of any wells of significance that are not monitoring wells or dewatering wells or remediation wells that continuously pump any significant quantity of water from that system.
And then for San Antonio Creek, are there extractions, and maybe we don't know this or have jurisdiction, but are there extractions being taken from San Antonio Creek?
I believe there are some that are wells that would count as surface water diversions downstream typically of the Ojai Basin. So
Right.
folks that have wells along Creek Road, between the basin and the confluence of the Ventura River, some of those wells may count as surface water diversions, and I think they're registered as such.
So I've been telling people that who are interested in San Antonio Creek as it comes into the river adjudication and the physical solution, that the water that's in San Antonio Creek, you know, with the exception of maybe Arundo, really has negligible extraction, if at all, from the system. Is that a fair statement?
That's a good question. I think Arundo is an invasive species that is a phreatophyte and highly evapotranspirative. And the assumption is that turf grass will transpire 3 acre-feet per acre in a given year, and Arundo can be 10 times that or more. So there's been some discussion of studies to be done to quantify how much water Arundo takes up. Now, the timing of amounts of water in the system is important to that, because
Right.
when there's a lot of water, sometimes the percentage is very low of what those phreatophytes, both native and invasive, will take up.
The real question, I think, is there any riparian takes? And I don't know of a riparian diversion.
Yeah, I don't think there's any active, current, significant riparian diversion.
Yeah.
I think Topa Topa Ranch had one for a while, but they've more or less turned that off. I think Thatcher School had one, but those are on the upstream side.
From where Andrew's talking, I mean, really, he's talking from the city down.
Yeah, city down, there's very little.
And I don't, Yeah.
I think they're all in the,
I mean, really from the confluence with the Ventura River,
up into.
all the way
city.
up to,
Yeah,
you know, the foothills of the mountains here.
yeah, I think everything that would be a diversion.
know.
I mean,
is de
there's
minimis.
one diversion that I know of that doesn't work.
Okay.
The spreading grounds.
Well, yeah. There's two wells that I know of on Lower San Antonio. One is for that house at the entrance to Sulphur Mountain Road. It sits up on the hill there, and it's a domestic well. I don't think they use much.
Right.
And I think the winery has a well, and I don't think they use it that much either.
Yeah, most of them, I think there's probably a dozen wells of similar hydrogeologic situation, and they're all relatively small, domestic, and I think they qualify as de minimis with respect to the surface water diversion.
And so the water that's in San Antonio Creek is really determined by the rainfall for
Bingo.
the season.
Yeah,
There's maybe some minor, really minor variations to that, but it's really just, you know, did we have a good rain year or did we not?
exactly.
I have heard anecdotal stories that in places where they've removed Arundo, that they'll get water, you know, coming back up in the stream bed. But other than that, so
It's all about the rain.
yeah, I'm sure we're gonna talk about this later, but I'm kind of
Yeah.
annoyed about the idea that we've got somebody coming in and talking about what's going on in the river in conjunction with what's going on in the basin, and it's just
Yeah.
doesn't fit,
As Johnny,
understanding of our water system.
as Johnny Cochran once said, without rain, you can't sustain.
Well, technically, it's a gaining stream, correct? So there are minor extractions probably, but there's probably just as much or more minor flows into the stream.
The gaining portion of the stream is over the perch system. It's the nature of discharge from that thin perched aquifer. Most of the removal of water from that system is from phreatophytes, sycamores, plants, arundo, native and invasive species are taking up the majority of that water.
But downstream of the city, there's some minor flows into the stream, subsurface from Sulphur Mountain and
Lion Creek a little bit,
the
things of
Lion
that
Creek
nature.
a little bit, but it's probably equal to or greater than the extractions.
It's in relative balance.
wet year, yeah.
Yeah, it's in relative balance most of the time.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public? All right, thank you, Jordan. The next item is questions from the public that do not appear on today's agenda. Are there any of those? Okay, hearing none. Then we'll move to the consent agenda. I think that's next, which is the financial report and the minutes of March 26th meeting. I have one question on the financial report. What was the $20,000 refund to Thatcher School?
I had a feeling that would jump out. So as we've been going through meters and getting people in compliance and asking for photos of their meters, we find that people are not incorporating the meter multiplier correctly, and they were over-reporting by a factor of 10.
Jeez.
So we refunded them.
And they're
It goes the
right.
other way too, when people
They're
underreport.
learning.
So
Turn it over to the math department.
math, it's the math.
Didn't work.
Yeah.
And they had a change in the personnel there too. I was doing the reporting.
Okay, any other questions on the minutes or the financial reports? Sure. Could you
I'm Larry Mahalis.
give your name for the record?
I just said it, yeah, I just said it. Richard, you don't remember me, I haven't been here for so long. I'm Larry Mahalis. I'm a grower. I just went through the minutes here, and bear with me with my speech. I'm older now, so I'm not getting words out like I used to.
All right.
The thing that struck me was in 2023, the
Could I interrupt you for a second? Are you want to address the audit report, correct?
that's correct, sir.
Not last month's expenditures.
No, that's correct, sir.
Okay, well, you can go ahead. That's the next item on the agenda, so.
Well, I'll just try to make it short.
Sure.
I saw here that the total liabilities and net position was for 2025, $715,625. And the liabilities really were only $17,158. So the net position was $698,467. This tangentially is related to something Bob Daddy was saying, with all due respect, Bob. I didn't mean to say anything disrespectful when I walked in,
No.
but I do remember you, and it's nice seeing you. If we're going back to 2024, the net position was $399,801,000. Going back just 1 year, it was $266,613,000. What it looked like to me was between 2023 and 2024, it's not an exact calculation, but I just eyeballed this, and it looks like the financial position of the OBGMA went up 50%, and then it went up again. So right now in our treasury, according to this analysis here, as of the dates that they did the analysis, they're at $698,467,000. And I'm struck by the fact that all of us, and Jim Finch knows this very well, and some of you other folks do too, all of us are really, when I say all of us, I mean all of us that are growers in the community, are really paying a tremendous amount of money. And I'm wondering, why do we have such a rich position? I remember back when I was attending the meetings and we were dealing with sustainability and trying to decide what to do, and Peter may remember those days. He was always here, and same with Jordan. I remember we were concerned we didn't have enough money because we always had a very weak financial position. And so they increased the extract fees, and then they increased them again and again. And back 12 or 14 years ago when I first came to the community, it was just such a different position and such a different picture. And many of us ask ourselves, what's going on? I can only speak for myself. I don't understand why we have so much. Why are we such a rich treasury? There's so much. We're in better position than the United States of America in this wonderful country we live in. And thank God we are here and not somewhere else. But I just don't understand it. And that's why I'm here, just asking for clarification, because when they first came out with the reason for raising the extract fees and all of these things, it was so we had to have enough money, as I recall. Cece can, when you were here and then you left for a while, you can corroborate that or put me in my place. But I seem to remember everybody was just so concerned we didn't have enough money in the treasury. I've said enough, but that's what my concern is. We have too much there. I don't know why we have it. I don't know why the growers are paying so much money for extraction if we're just accumulating more and more and more money, and our auditors are concerned that we have in there more than we should have. We don't have the FDIC insurance anymore that covers that additional number, $100,000. Maybe one of you here today could answer that question. Maybe Jim can. He's shaking his head. Thank you for allowing me to talk. And I apologize if I was rude to anybody in my presentation.
Oh, not at all. Thank you for coming.
One of the major liabilities we're facing is a $250,000 5-year report that we have to pay for. That's coming due, so there's gonna be a big chunk taken out of that reserve. And we're working very hard on trying to get the state to give us some relief so that we don't have to do that, because we're just reproducing the same information, it seems, over and over again in these big reports. And when we adopted the current rates, we understood that if we were able to do things to avoid some of these costs, we could go back and lower those rates. So it is, since I've been here, this is the largest reserve we've ever had, I agree, but we have extraordinary expenses, liabilities coming.
And that is it. It was flattening it out, because otherwise you would be down, and then all of a sudden in the year we had to produce the report, the fee would be $400 an acre foot. If, so build, spend it, build, you know, so you'll be going up and then down, I mean, the way it's projected, because that money's also mine and paid from pumping, and I would rather have it flatlined than spiked tremendously.
I don't know what all the expenses are. I just look at the,
It's this every 5-year expense.
I understand,
Extraordinary.
I understand that.
That's
And
what-
I remember that they were projecting, and I may be remembering wrong, it was somewhere between $250,000 and $400,000.
Yeah.
That's what I remember. And we're certainly strong enough in our treasury that we could, you know, make an adjustment. I'm sure the growers would appreciate that over the next three sessions, instead of sending out a continuing bill and then getting a charge like CC sends me because we missed a line, and I'm not coming at you and saying that's your job. But it's just, Jim, it's just out of hand. And why should there be that much money in the treasury? And if necessary, they can back off. I'm not saying go back to the way it was 12 years ago. I'm not asking for that. And I understand why we had to pay, and I think most of the growers are in tune with that. We're all in tune. We want to pay because we want to continue to produce and to contribute to the Ojai community and to everything in general. So I understand all of those things. Yeah, I do, but we still have too much money in there, I think. And I think the growers deserve to have, not a kickback, not a one-time kickback, but to make some kind of a reduction. People will appreciate that, yeah.
A comment. And again, Jim said this, we're replicating the same report without a changeable condition every 5 years, getting no benefit going forward. The growers could help us by getting politically active, changing some of these little rules. We don't have subsidence, and we don't have overdraft, and we don't have all these ugly things, yet we have to do the same reports that cost us a fortune identifying these ugly things we don't have. And then I would ask Julia one other question. When I came on this board a few years ago, we had a fairly large number of pumpers that were not reporting, didn't have meters, and certainly were not paying. And so I'm sure that that is something that is added to the reserve.
I'm not sure we had a large, I don't want to speak for them, but there were a number of pumpers that were reporting differently, as I recall. But they were paying, some of them were reporting that they were having less than 2 acres foot annually or something. I think it was a number close to that. But you're overstating it, again, with all due respect, Bob.
Okay.
I think you're overstating it.
Well,
I'm
I'll
not
check
trying
with
to-
Julia.
I'm not trying to represent the other growers, although they may be happy that if they're watching on Zoom that I'm here today. And I don't want to be in that position because I'm not in a position to do that for many personal reasons.
Okay.
But I have no more to say, and I don't want, with all due respect to what Richard said in the beginning, he wants to get through with this meeting. But if something could be done, and if you could discuss it among yourselves, it seems to me like it would be a simple thing.
So I'll make a brief comment first. I love it so much when someone like you comes and tells us your perspective, what's coming on, because a lot of times we're here at this board and we talk about things, we're doing our best job we can, but we're not getting feedback from the public. But what I will say is that, and I've been on the board for 3 years, is that my perception that we're flush with plenty of money is not as strong as your perception that we are, and it's in part because of what Mr. Hages and Mr. Finch said. Every 5 years, we have to pay this huge amount of fees to do this government reporting, and then, so subtract that amount, today from our figure, and we're not looking as flush. Now, if we can sustain some years where it looks like we have more money than, we can look at adjusting our rates. But my perception is that we do have to be fiscally conservative, and those fees, until we are working on trying to get the reporting requirement reduced or paid for by the state. But that's my perception, is that, that's a big expense, and we spend a lot of time talking about how we're gonna make that payment every 5 years, and then how we can, get relief for you guys. One of the problems is that the state creates these one-size-fits-all situations, and so we've got a smaller basin with smaller users, and the system's kind of set up to address these huge basins with lots of users, and so the expenses end up being more diffuse.
If we look at just what we've accumulated as a position, as a financial position from 2024 to 2025, we went up from $399,801 to $698. Went up almost $300,000. And if it was just reported by Richard, use your first name, I hope that's okay, that we're looking at $250,000 that we need to put out, and then it'll be 5 years again. I certainly believe there's enough money there. I'm sure there are other expenses, and I know there are other expenses, but legal expenses, one thing and another. And I'm the one, Peter, you may remember, that fought for all the legal expenses when everybody was trying to tear it down. Okay.
I remember, we do a 5-year report every 5 years and an annual report every year. And in my view, what
if I'm wrong, just
what I plan on is, this is our first 5 years that we've been under this thing. So now we're getting a better idea of what the expenses are. And if you look at our average operating expenses, they haven't gone up hardly at all. It's all these consultant expenses that are killing us. So I think we can reevaluate where we're at. And like Jim said, what we didn't want to do is reevaluate after 5 years and then find out we got to raise the rates again. So I would really love to lower them, but I don't want to have to raise them, lower them, raise them, lower them. It's expensive too. It isn't something that we can just do. So I understand where you're at. I mean, I was kind of shocked we had that much money too, to tell you the truth. But I do know the expense coming is going to drain it.
thank you for allowing me to speak.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
So, do you need a motion on the consent items?
Yes.
I'd move.
Second.
Call the roll.
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Whitman?
Yes?
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Weaver?
Yes.
Chair Hages?
Yes. Okay, now for the audit report. Julia, did you want to go over any of the details on that?
Sounds like we did. I mean, just to address the speaker's concerns, you guys might recall, we went through an exercise where I had projected cash flow, out for 5 years based on the different actions that the GSP was requiring. And that's how we settled on the rate increases. I am more than happy to do that again as we get to next year's budget, to update that cash flow scenario, see what the next 5 years looks like, and again, come up with different scenarios for making any adjustments to the extraction fees and the GSP fees. Because it is a lot. And again, it's based on some assumptions, right? And then we got a lot of rain and there was more pumping. There were a lot of factors that went into why the accounts are so full, so flush right now. Other than that, the audit was pretty straightforward. It's a new firm that we use this year, and they asked a lot of questions about risk and fraud and things, some questionnaires that we filled out and provided to them. But other than that, it was pretty straightforward. They worked with our bookkeeper to get all the numbers balanced.
Okay? And it was a clean audit.
Yes, no discrepancies, nothing untoward in the audit.
Any questions, comments? Any public comments? If not, I can have a motion to accept the audit report for 24, 25, or 23, 24, and
24,
what are
25.
they?
425.
24, 25.
I'll move to accept.
Second.
Call the roll?
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Whitman,
Yes?
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Weaver,
Yes.
Chair Hages.
Yes. Okay, the next item is a discussion, is a report on the Ventura, status of the Ventura River watershed adjudication proceedings related to the Ohio groundwater basin. And in your packet, if you've had time to review it, there's a executive summary of the submittal that the city of Ojai, Casitas, and the East Ojai Pumpers Group endorsed and submitted to the court. It's under review right now. I've been involved in this on more than I like, so I probably can answer a lot of your questions, but right now, where we are is there's gonna be a hearing on July 1st to consider the management entity appointment of Casitas to the Ojai Basin, and there's going to be a trial either the latter part of August or first part of September to determine which of the three competing proposed physical solutions are gonna be adopted by the court. And there are three. One is ours, the Ojai Basin, or the Ojai sub-basin of the Ventura River watershed. And then there's one submitted by the city of Ventura that's for the entire watershed that incorporates what we've proposed in the Ojai Basin, although we have some issues that are maybe conflicting with our proposal. And then there's a proposal by the State Water Resources and Fish and Wildlife Service that is pretty far from where we're at. The good news is that in everything that we've gone through, I don't think, and I've asked Jordan and Dudek to, in a later date, to review it and see if it's in conflict with our GSP, because according to the law, it cannot be in conflict. I doubt if it is, but we're gonna have to make a finding. And then the other thing, we're probably gonna be asked by the court what our opinion as the management entity of the basin is of the proposed solution, and whether or not we support the general provisions of that solution. And it may change between now and, it won't change between now and July 1st, I don't believe, but I think we're gonna have to probably do something at the end of May, because the court is gonna, they're gonna take testimony in July 1st, probably be on this issue. Anyway, if you have any questions or discussion, feel free.
Yes, I don't know who's at liberty to speak about this or knows. Under E, management, entity, and governance, line 17, would you go in and get the alphabet soup out and tell us what a TAC is and what kind of guidance are these things? 1-year appointment, 4-year appointments? I mean, we put a little blurb and it says, hey, we're gonna do this. Nothing.
Yeah, TAC is a Technical Advisory Committee, and that's pretty common. It's a separate, somewhat separate group from the management entity that reviews data, requests from various organizations of the public to consider projects on the watershed. They may look at requests to drill a well, requests to do a diversion. So they review all of the technical information to provide a expert opinion to the management entity.
And they're gonna be strictly advisory. They'll have no
Yes.
oversight authority, okay?
Yeah. The authority is, the authority forever is the court, but the management entity is just kind of the last local clearinghouse. And if we have disagreements and someone challenges the management agency, then it goes to court. But the thing that I like most about this is it's kept the OBGMA autonomy. We really aren't part of that, other than we are listed to participate in the technical advisory committee to have a technical representative. But we continue as we have been. We don't have any new authority, no new responsibilities.
The other portion of this is there are lots of different stipulations. I'm just wondering, where does the revenue come for steelhead pool rescue? Where does it come for moving obstacles? Where does it come from? Where's, I'm very clear that the Conservancy got $7 million for a Arundo, and that's, you know, that's stated, that's here, we know that. Where's the revenue gonna come for these?
Well, that's the battle.
That's the question.
What's
the
yeah.
question. And the question of what the court can do and can't do.
I mean, can they,
Well, what's included in this is one of the battles, is who's gonna pay for the administration? Now, the administration proposed in this is relatively small. Casitas has proposed that they pay for it because they already do most of this stuff. And they've estimated that it would cost them about $180,000 additional to what they already do a year to comply with this. That would, Mike Flood said it would be between $16 and $20 an acre foot on Casitas water sales.
wow.
The rest of these things are self-funded. That's one of the conditions in all of these. You want to bring a proposal to do something like Arundo removal. The Land Conservancy wants to do that, and they want it to be included, but they have a funding source. There's barrier removals like the Fraser Creek crossing, Fraser Street crossing. That belongs to the county, not to us. The management entity can identify it as a barrier to fish passage, but it's up to the county or some other group to come up with the money and the ability to do it. I mean, Casitas doesn't have the authority, and the management entity doesn't have that authority. So that's the battle here. I mean, we have a proposal by the state to do this horrendous monitoring program for the entire watershed that includes all kinds of fancy instrumentation and real-time reporting on the chemistry and the flows and all of this. But you ask them, well, how are we gonna pay for it? You know, the one comment was, well, we think we could do it for $100 an acre foot.
Just that measly amount, just $100.
And that's just that. That's not the administration. They have a seven-member, they're proposing a 7-member management entity board. Well, who's gonna, you know, they said, well, people will volunteer to be on it. Well, those people, they're just like us. We don't do the work. We come here and, you know, review things and vote on it, but we have people that have to do the work to prepare all that. Who's gonna pay for that? Anyway, it's not, it is not resolved, I can say that. And I don't know where it's gonna go. We're trying to, the judge has ordered us all to continue negotiating to try to come up with one solution. We have the support of the city of Ventura for this solution, as well as City of Ojai and the Ojai pumpers. So we have a good, strong support for what we're proposing, and Ventura included it in their proposal, but it has a few other things that we have some issues with. And it's not just has to do with Ojai, it has to do with Casitas' service area too. So we're gonna have to resolve those. Or what my fear is we'll throw 3 proposals on the table, and a judge who has limited knowledge of all of this stuff is gonna put together something we gonna have to live with for life. Not only our life, everybody's for now on. It's a scary thing.
So I've got a question and then a comment, and the question is, there was somebody talked to me about this, is what's gonna happen that this, management committee is gonna decide there's not enough water in San Antonio Creek, and they're gonna say, okay, Ojai groundwater basin, you gotta supplement the water so that we can, is that like concept alive, or is it being eliminated by this agreement?
In the state's proposal, they propose 3 CFS, I believe it is, at Soul Park, another minimum flow at Camp Comfort, and another minimum flow at the confluence. They don't say where it's coming from. They just say that that's what they want. And then the city of Ventura's, in their attempt to try to compromise, I guess, they are looking at 3 CFS during dry periods, or, there's certain conditions at the confluence, and 6 CFS during normal periods, I think is what they're trying to, it's not clear. But they have a couple of other parties on the upstream of the confluence that have said, well, we're willing to work on trying to come up with a way to augment flows. Well, I mean, if you lived here long enough, if there were flows that we could augment in a drought, we would have done it. There's no water. So,
Well, and that was the questions that I was asking of Jordan earlier, is that our flow is dependent on our rainfall, kind of end of story. And the only thing that I see that they could potentially do to increase flows is to reduce vegetation. As a possibility, but there's just, nobody's pumping water out of the perched aquifer, and the basin is self-contained. So the first part of this whole litigation, they were headed towards a trial where, Ventura was going to argue that the basin was interconnected, with the river and San Antonio Creek, and there just wasn't any evidence that would support that. And that when that became apparent, the case was taken into this mediation phase that lasted for 5 years. And it's a little bit confusing and annoying to me that we're now talking about, some jurisdiction over the San Antonio Creek, when in my mind, it's kind of an independent water source that isn't currently being impacted in any significant way by mankind. And yet they're gonna start regulating it, and that just, bothers me how far they might decide they would go. And my, personal belief, one of the reasons I'm serving on this board, is that I view this groundwater basin as the most important asset that the Ojai Valley has, or at least that part that's serviced by the groundwater basin. Our way of life is, dependent on that being there, and it's served us well, and it just makes me nervous that somebody's gonna potentially kind of jump in and disrupt the apple cart.
Yeah, the biggest concern that, I have, Casitas has too, is having this decision structured so it's basically a mediation with the state in perpetuity, where we're constantly being dinged to do something else. We're trying desperately to avoid that as much as possible and protect water rights. So this is supposed to not challenge anyone's water rights. So that I don't see how they're going to mandate augmentation of flows without impacting water rights. Somebody's.
Right.
So that's a big question, and we can't, problem is, we can't get any specifics, you know, they make these proposals, and all they wanna talk about is these mind-numbing details about what kind of monitoring they want and their models. We spent 3 years in mediation talking about a model that has pretty much been scrapped. So it is very frustrating. And now this judge is losing his patience, so he's trying to put the gun to everybody's head to get them to move. And, it's, I think I'm optimistic, not real optimistic, but more than I was, that the city of Ventura and the Ojai group can come to some compromise on a single solution that we can take to the judge. Our fear is that the state will keep modifying the cities and it'll get worse and worse and worse. But so far, at least, with this, we've avoided any huge costs to the Ojai Valley.
I'd disagree with that, but oh well.
Look at Santa Maria, if you want to see huge costs. And
We've spent,
decades.
there's been a lot of money spent.
Oh, yeah,
Decades.
yeah.
There's been a lot of money spent.
No, that's already happened, but I mean,
Right.
future water costs is, I mean, the amount of money spent is just outrageous. I mean, imagine what we could have done with all that money.
City of Ojai has spent.
And they still
A
wanna
lot
put
of money.
rocks in the river.
Yeah, yeah, and that'll take a permitting and forever studying and, you know, it's, yeah.
Richard, could you just clarify what's supposed to be coming up here? You mentioned July 1st is a date that the court's going to decide something. I think you said management entity.
July 1st, the judge wants to have Mike Flood testify as to the credentials of the Casitas Water District to be the management entity. And then apparently you have to have a trial within 5 years of some deadline. I don't know what happened, but July 1st was the deadline. You had to have a trial. We pushed for a trial on connectivity, but we didn't get it. And so the judge set this trial on July 1st to interview Casitas basically to satisfy that requirement. So it's just a technicality.
Okay, sounds like an evidentiary hearing. Mike Flood will be testifying to his qualifications, but ultimately then it's going to be decided, what, later in the fall, it sounds like?
Yeah,
as to
either-
which of these proposals is going to win, or if the parties can get together and agree on some sort of a combination of proposals perhaps, then
Yeah, I think the I don't sure of the date, but I know there's a potential date in August if we get, if we have something to take to court, and then there's another date, first part of September. That one's a hard date that we're gonna go to trial if we don't have something, the way it is right now. I think what we're hoping is that we can whittle down our disagreements, and there are very few on the Ojai Basin proposal. There's very few, except from the state, of course. They don't like it at all. But there's really very few. But we have some, half a dozen or so fairly significant issues with the city of Ventura's proposal. And if we can get some of those resolved, the trial might be just on a couple of issues. I don't know that the state's prepared to really produce anything.
And the city of Ventura's proposal incorporates the San Antonio Creek subwatershed management as part of its overall program, so these issues would not affect OBGMA per se, but other areas of the watershed. Yeah.
Yeah, other areas are the problem.
Exactly, as the state's reservations and having this locally managed.
Yeah, they sing that song, but the reality is that isn't what they want.
No, but why don't they, why aren't they at least giving that an opportunity to work?
If you read their proposal, it's like a regulatory permit. That's what they do. That's all they know how to do as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it has all these deadlines and, you know, they wanna have flow targets and water quality thresholds and
More reports.
more reports, yeah, and more monitoring, and they wanna be able to nail you if you don't comply, you know, so there's all these, that's why it's very important to, we be careful about committing to doing something.
Is Channel Keepers aligned with the state on the idea of having, you know, all the elaborate monitoring and minimum flows for San Antonio Creek?
They've been relatively quiet, yeah. You know, they got what they wanted. I mean, City of Ventura pretty much gave in. They're gonna reduce their pumping at Foster Park, and that's what it was all about.
Right.
So, the scary thing is this augmentation thing. I mean, that's just,
That's what
they tr- yeah.
concerns me, and
They treat it like it's downstream of Kachuma or Piru or someplace that has a control to release, you know, at any given time. and
yeah,
any
like
given-
there's a dam and.
Yeah, yeah. And they don't,
And I guess the thought occurs to me is that, you know, maybe we need to look at what a funding source would be if, to oppose that if it ever came to the point where they're saying, you know, whether that's, I don't know what that funding source would be, but it scares the hell out of me that could happen.
yeah.
And part of what worries me is that, you know, they made all these arguments for why they should have this kind of basin-wide look at everything, and they couldn't prove or justify, you know, and so we avoided that first trial because they were gonna lose on that issue, and yet kind of the way they're potentially managing it acts as if we do have this, like, you know, watershed wide, when in fact the different water systems are very much confined. And when you go from San Antonio Creek and the Ojai Basin, the upper Ojai Basin, there's very little human activity that's impacting what's there. It's primarily rainfall that impacts how much water we've got and how much is in the streams.
Well, the big ticket item in the city's proposal that we are very uncomfortable with, and in the states, is the fish habitat restoration plan. Sounds like a easy thing. It is a bottomless pit of monitoring and funding for all kinds of crazy things, and they use the adaptive management. That's a new, all that means is we can keep adding on, we can keep adding on. So we'll spend a bunch of money, that didn't work, move on to something else. So all of that is embedded in this, and then you're locked into it. So we're trying to tamp that down as much as we possibly can. Just make sure this is.
I can see that for the Ventura River, but, you know, I'm not a fisherman or anything like that, but I don't remember anyone, you know, growing up talking about the steelhead population in San Antonio Creek. All that discussion was always about the Ventura River, you know, and how the Matilla Dam was impacting that.
Well, the debate over the fish is a heated one, to say the least. But anyway, I think the complete document is on our website if you want to look at it, the Ojai document. And I think the other two are on Casitas' site. You have to have a good stomach to read one of them. So if you have time, look at that. I think what may happen next board meeting is we may ask to, number one, determine whether or not this is conflict with our GSP, and do we support the general principles of the OI portion of this. The one thing I brought up with our attorneys is Ojai Basin, Ojai Valley Groundwater Management Agency has an ordinance that prohibits export of water. So if you pump water out of the ground and dump it in the creek, that's an export. So that's one flag we're gonna keep waving. Any other questions? Anything from the public? All right. Then I will ask that we adjourn this meeting in memory of Peter Theckley at 4:07. Thank you.
Hey, what did the city get for all its money in the lawsuit
Thank you.
that they initiated? What did we really get out of it?
Initiate what?
Oh, the city voluntarily joined the lawsuit. We don't have a